Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today I am coming to you live from Los Angeles in my absolute most dangerous set. There are cables running everywhere. Everything is improvised. There's some electrical hazards. It's got basically everything you would expect from a fully improvised set, and this is just the way I did it back when I was on the Nullbyte show. So, very familiar homecoming. This is actually the room that I shot a lot of those episodes in. So if it looks like I'm being held hostage and there's a bunch of dangerous stuff around me, it's because back on the Nullbyte set. Anyway, it's good to see everyone on the stream today. I've had the chat up. I see James, SAQ, Average Joe, Leo. We've got a bunch of people on the show already today. Good to see you. And also, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I've got going on for the upcoming Hope Conference. So we are bringing, I think, 6 or 7 people to Hope, and it's going to be awesome. We get our own village for the very first time ever, and my team has kind of been practicing with this a little bit at the last couple conferences we did. At the Layer 1 conference, we got to organize our own area and also had to bring our own soldering irons and everything else. So we've got a little bit of experience doing it, but this is the first time we're doing it really big. So if you're coming to Hope, then we will have a lot of stuff going on in the Script Kiddie Village. In fact, we are hosting a total of 7 workshops, including a very cool and exciting Meshtastic one. And I wanted to talk about that kind of cool development today. In fact, let me fire up this very old and weird screen I have next to me. Yeah, there we go. All right, so this is Hope. If you haven't seen it, it is going to be super exciting. It's coming up incredibly soon. I just got a notification that my flight is in less than 24 hours, so a little nervous about that. But we're going to be going out there and teaching everyone about ethical hacking, electronics, and just getting people feeling comfortable getting into cyber and ethical hacking. So if you're interested, definitely make sure to come by if you're in the area, and especially if you're already going to Hope. We're going to have a lot of great stuff going on. So it'd be cool to see you at the Script Kiddie Village. So let's talk about one of the cool things that I get to show off. I think, is it here? Nope. Is it here? Yes. Okay, all right, let's try again. Can I, what? Okay, so I have, it looks like, wow, okay, so you heard it here first. It looks like Twitter is blocking, or sorry, I will call it X this time, is blocking referrals that are embedded. That's interesting. I don't know, I wonder if it's specifically about infosec.exchange. But no matter, we'll get there regardless. So it was not that long ago that my team managed to get Meshtastic working on one of our new nuggets. So if you've been hearing about the stuff I've been talking about with Meshtastic, it's been kind of challenging to compile, actually. Like, we tried to get our own Meshtastic device working, and it took several months. Now, the reason for this is because it is written in Platform IO. And Platform IO is a development system for microcontrollers that's a little bit tricky for people to learn, like right off the bat. But this was our very first opportunity to get it working. You can see this one is actually setting up, it's functioning, and it's able to receive packets. So that was all the tests I wanted to do. Like, it's able to be used as pretty much a regular Meshtastic device. So if you tried out other Meshtastic devices and you want to see what the Nugget version of this looks like, our goal with the Nugget was to make it so it would be compatible with as many popular projects as possible. And with the expansion of this, like, our team has forked the project and continued to work on new designs to take it even further. So in this case, with the addition of Bluetooth, it makes it possible to run mainline Meshtastic, which is awesome for anybody who's interested in exploring LoRa technology and working on projects that involve mesh networks. So you can set this node to a variety of different roles. It can be a server, it can just be a router, it can be a repeater, it can be a client, and all the features you would expect in another Meshtastic device are all actually looking like they're working. So I'm really proud of this one. I'm super excited that it is actually up and running, and we're going to be doing a Meshtastic meetup at the end of the conference. So if you're interested, excuse me. So if you are interested in Meshtastic or LoRa technology, make sure to check out our limited seats Meshtastic meetup, because I think we actually, due to a manufacturer of PCBs that shall not be named, asking repeated questions and not being able to deliver on time, we only have about maybe like 20, 25 seats max in this class. So if you're interested, it's probably going to be my favorite, but also the most limited as we only just got this working. So this design is really cool. I'm so excited that we were able to try out some of these popular projects that people are talking about. So if you're coming to Hope, make sure to check out the Meshtastic meetup. And then we're releasing a lot more information about classes today. We've actually added some classes, which I'm really excited about. So make sure to check out the schedule. You can see the workshops are going to be featured here. And if you look for me, you can see a lot of stuff. So this class has changed and will be updated. Oh, what will this IoT Hexleaf class be updated to? Well, you're going to hear it here first because it's not going to be till later today that this gets updated. So what could be more interesting and exciting than making your own IoT Hexleaf, huh? Well, one thing I've been interested in is these little, I call them pushines. So obviously these are not actually pushines. They're rounder, more simple. So I would call them maybe a Persheen, like a non-branded similar type cat that is blob-like and cute. So these are diffusers, and they're available on all sorts of websites, usually Amazon, stuff like that. And for around like 15, 20 bucks, you can get these cute little cats where when you bop them, they react. That's really it. It's got a shock sensor on the inside, and then the inside has a little disc with 2 neopixels and then 2 regular white lights. And that's it. That's the whole thing. It's not very powerful, but that's okay. And it doesn't have a lot of features. You can bop it, and you can go have it cycle through all the available colors. So all in all, not a bad lamp, but you can do more with it. So I wanted to go ahead and turn it into something a little bit more exciting. And this is one of our cyborg pushines that, of course, it's in the bright light and it's white. But if I were to shield it a little bit, you could probably see it lighting up much more robustly. And this has WLED on it. So we've actually put a Wi-Fi controllable chip in here that makes it so you can add this little Persheen, I guess we'll call it, to your Wi-Fi network and control it with like Home Assistant and do all sorts of custom animations. So these little guys are still squishy and cute. They're able to also have add-ons added later, like if you wanted to add a little microphone or something to make it sound reactive. So if you're looking for a really cool way to upgrade something really cute, but maybe a little dumb, to a smart Persheen, then this is going to be a really fun project. And we're going to be taking these and learning how to solder while also upgrading them to a open source LED controller project. I will also say, because there are only 2 LEDs in this one's able to get a significant amount brighter when it does colors. So it's pretty exciting to be able to take this little Persheen and then make it stronger, more robust, and able to do some custom animations, syncing, and other things that just wouldn't be possible. So for example, if I had all these little Persheens on one network, I could just send basically JSON commands to all of them to control them remotely. I could add them to my Home Assistant. It's really, really cool to be able to create a new IoT or connected device from like a relatively simple one. So hopefully this workshop is going to give people some ideas about how they could take something they see that's interesting, but maybe not smart, and like add a brain to it, like make it Wi-Fi connected, or even use it for some of the security testing we're doing. So we use these little Persheens as targets when we were doing Wi-Fi hacking, because we would be able to scan for them, identify where they were, and then maybe even confuse them by sending them certain packets. It also helped us teach some Wi-Fi network hunting, where we would have these little guys, jumping around in the network, choosing different IP addresses, and we would teach people how to use network scanning tools to identify them and then subsequently remotely control them. So I really like this form factor. I think they're fun to make. If you like them too, we've honestly sold out of them the last couple times that we've done conferences. We always bring not enough of these Persheens. So as a result, we're going to try to bring even more of them to this conference. So if you're interested, make sure to check it out. And if you catch me at any of these other conferences, I think I will do more of these kind of cat-based classes, because making them smart and adding unexpected features to these is actually really easy. And 3D printing new bases for them and creating great diffusers that work really well is also not so hard. So hopefully you will see this class at the conference. If not, then hopefully at another conference there. So, all right. Hope this live can be watched for later use. Yes, absolutely. We can totally. Well, actually, so not only do we do cutouts from these streams, so you'll probably see it come up in like a week or so, but also, yes, this will be recorded and you can go back and see it. You could put a bunch of them on your desk and use them for notifications. Yeah. So what's really cool is once this little guy's on your network, then you can just address him any way you want. You can set up custom animations, presets, and other things so that when let's say you get a notification, it like turns on, plays a little animation of your choice, and turns off again. You can connect this to basically anything. And it also, because it has like a Wi-Fi card, can either be its own access point or it can join an access point. So there's lots of flexibility for controlling this. And WLED is generally supported really well by a number of other projects. Now there's things you can add to it as well. Like WLED supports like all sorts of other sensors and plugins and add-ons and buttons and stuff. So if you wanted to add some more stuff to this, you absolutely could. For example, like this little guy comes with a shock sensor. So if you wanted to add other external sensors to like trigger it to turn on or change transitions, you could absolutely do that. Maybe pick a more interesting sensor, like a presence sensor or something. So the Pusheen, if it detects like with millimeter radar, because there's some really cheap millimeter radar like presence sensors on the market right now. Maybe if it senses a person and gets like the high pin from one of these, then it turns into a color and like threatens the intruder. I don't know, something like that. Lets them know that they're seen. Or it could just greet you when you come in. But either way, like customizing these, upgrading them, adding electronics, that's going to be a big part of kind of like tearing apart standard electronics, seeing how they're made, and then trying to improve them a little bit. So if you've ever been interested in making your own IoT stuff or connecting stuff to the internet, this is going to be super fun. And like James said, you can do all sorts of connected stuff with it. WLED, I assume. Yes, that is so far the absolute best project. Moomin cats? Yeah, okay. Kody, idea, make a PCB knife. I feel like I am already on enough like lists. I'm not sure if forgetting one of these in my suitcase and then having to talk to the TSA is worth it on that one. But I actually really do like the idea because PCBs are very sharp, although somewhat brittle compared to steel. I was actually looking at the T-Deck from Meshtastic. Yeah, so I have like a T-beam, like actually Michael's the one that bought it. It's one of the LoRa modules that's specifically meant for being like a repeater or router hoisted up in a large place with 2 antennas to be able to provide a lot of bandwidth for devices in the area trying to communicate with each other. It's ugly, and I don't have a case for it, but it's designed to go, inside a larger enclosure or something and go outside. So ours is going to be somewhere in the middle. It's going to be like a nugget plus an add-on that makes it so you can try out Meshtastic, and you can also swap out antennas. So you can get more specific about the type that you want, if you want to do that. Good to see you, Corey, James, and everyone. I've been called Corey many times. Let's see. Oh, these Dell monitors tend to overheat and die. Yeah, we got this from Goodwill, and it also has VGA only output, so that's also a lot of fun. All right, so let's talk about some other things. This was a good find from Goodwill. I decided that I wanted to add joystick control to one of my projects, and then I was like, why don't I try a flight controller? And found out that my air sickness applies to simulated flight as well. So this is now relatively useless unless I develop some sort of nugget turret. However, still a good find. And of course, I also got something for the conference. This is something for us to basically run demos on. This is a CanaKit Raspberry Pi 5 starter kit. I sometime maybe the last conference lost my old Raspberry Pi 5. It's just in the churn somewhere. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a unboxing / setup video on like a Nullbyte episode featuring this, and then also have it at the conference as something that people can attack with their nuggets and other things. So just diving into this kit really quick. I like CanaKit a lot because generally they provide really well thought out kits for their stuff, and they're super friendly. I bought kits with them before, and I used to talk with them when I worked for Nullbyte about like making ethical hacking kits, and they were pretty open to the idea. So yeah, generally wonderful people, and provide all the accessories you need. So for Raspberry Pi 5, bringing to a conference, what do I bring? What kit did I get? Well, I'm going to go through it really quick because if you forget any of the stuff, then it's kind of annoying, and I feel like I picked kind of the right one. 2 micro HDMI to regular HDMI out. I hate these cables, but they're necessary, and if you don't have them, working with Raspberry Pis is a nightmare. We've got our fast 128 gigabyte SD card, more than I expected. That's good. We've got our CanaKit brand USB-C power delivery, 45 watts. These Raspberry Pis are super power hungry, and you're going to need something like this if you try to run it off of like the kind of things that you used to use maybe for your OctoPi server or your Octoprint server that's like always complaining about low voltage. You're going to get throttled so quickly, like you might as well not have a Raspberry Pi 5. So a power supply that can support the correct amount of wattage is really important. And then we've got a case, but notice that this has room for a fan. why do I care about a fan? You know, like most Raspberry Pis, I just let them run. And in fact, when I did a cyber camp last year and all the kids were playing Cookie Clicker on their Raspberry Pis, I allowed them to get so hot that they thermally throttled themselves and made it so the kids had to stop playing the games and pay attention or only run command line tools. So in the past, thermal throttling has actually been great for me in that one circumstance. But with the new Raspberry Pi, I'm supposed to be talking about how fast it is and how good it is at all this stuff. So if you fail to cool it actively, it's going to get hot enough that it performs pretty poorly. And at that point, you're probably going to give it a bad review. So as for the thermal protection, we've got a big ass heat sink, like very large compared to the size of the board, and then an active fan to go into the case. So with all that being said, I think we've got the SD card adapter. So that's just assuming that maybe, you know, you need one because you're working with the SD card. Very well thought out. I appreciate the people at Kinnickit. And then finally, the Raspberry Pi itself. So this is like 75% accessories and then the Raspberry Pi. But yeah, that's kind of always how Raspberry Pis have been. And they're getting even more so because with the power requirements, the cooling requirements, this is no longer like a credit-sized computer you can just plug in and forget about with virtually any power supply. As the demand for power has increased, these have gotten a little bit more, you know, finicky with what they will and won't work with. So if you want to have a good experience with Raspberry Pi, I highly recommend all these things in this kit. If you forget any of them or if you cheap out on them, then you might end up having the same experience as like a Raspberry Pi 4, but with a significant increase in price. All right. Is the Pi 5 worth buying? Yes and no. Let me elaborate. So your competing objects are like the Raspberry Pi 4 or like the Raspberry Pi 400, which is like the keyboard style Raspberry Pi that you can type on but doesn't have a trackpad for some reason. Still mad about that. So compared to those, this is going to be more powerful, offer like a lot of upgrades, but it's still not going to be able to do some things that I really liked about the old Raspberry Pi, which is like the ability to use the wireless card for hacking. Like, why did nobody at Raspberry Pi think that like this device that's really popular with hackers might want to have like a wireless card that supports doing like interesting Wi-Fi stuff? I don't know. But apparently it's a real pain in the ass to have to write these firmware drivers when they're closed source. So using like a Broadcom driver that's like locked down is not going to excite any hackers. There has to be an open source one introduced for it, like was done for the Raspberry Pi with the Nextcom driver. Nextmon driver, which allowed for monitor mode using the native Wi-Fi card of the Raspberry Pi 4. So it's a little challenging to get super excited about it as a Wi-Fi hacker because like you're adding stuff to it now, and it's like you're gonna have to pick an alpha wireless network adapter, and the build cost starts getting like a bit higher. So I really did like the simplicity and elegance of using the older like Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. Like that was kind of my favorite generation because it was super applicable for most hacking tasks and didn't require many add-ons or additions to be used. That being said, it's very powerful. You'll be able to use some of the Kali tools that otherwise you would have had to just ignore or write off on a Raspberry Pi. And the fact that it supports like 2 monitors out, like you can really make this little guy like the center of your Wi-Fi hacking or other hacking experience as you're learning. And it's still cheap enough that I feel like if something were to happen with it, it's not a big deal. But at this point, it's also getting into the territory of like a cheap ThinkPad when it comes to like capacity and all the other stuff. So the argument between a Raspberry Pi 5 and a cheap ThinkPad, it's kind of difficult for me right now. I mean, for a couple $100, you can get a full feature ThinkPad that you can do a lot more than you can do on a Raspberry Pi. And you also have to consider that a lot of the peripherals with the Raspberry Pi, don't come with it. When you get an older ThinkPad, you get the screen, you get the keyboard, you get the trackpad, and a lot of I/O, like battery, like charging system. You don't get that with the Raspberry Pi. So you really have to think about your use case. And my suggestion would be, if you like the older Raspberry Pis, this is a nice upgrade. If you're brand new to ethical hacking and you want a Linux system to work off of that tends to be pretty well supported, then great. The Raspberry Pi community is really good. So super recommend the Raspberry Pi for all those things. But like compared to an old ThinkPad, if you're really just getting started, I don't know if I would anymore recommend a Raspberry Pi 5 over like a $120 to $300 ThinkPad that you find off eBay that is relatively well maintained and has most of the things you need. So those two in my head are becoming increasingly neck and neck, but I would still recommend the Raspberry Pi because you can still tend to find it on a budget. Although this kit ran me like $100 something to get it here in time for the conference. So I remember the days when Raspberry Pis were actually $35, but no longer. Parrot OS is better personally. Oh yeah, and the question being Kali or Parrot, which should I use to learn on? And James also says I would buy a mini PC over Raspberry Pi. Yeah, man, like there's a lot of interesting Raspberry Pi hats. So if you're working with hardware, that's an exception. Like James said, like if you need the like GPIO, like that, like the general purpose input output pins for adding things, playing with electronics, that sort of thing, like then it can be very useful. And there is some crossover between like microcontrollers and the Raspberry Pi, where it can do like many microcontroller like things, like plug into sensors directly or control something over like a a microcontroller style protocol. Those are all things it can do. So the GPIO, especially if you're working with hardware, sensors, that sort of thing, might be a big deal for you if you want to like connect it all crazy to something. Otherwise, price for performance versus like other things that are out there, especially like used computers that are in generally like good abundance. Like I struggle to fully recommend the Raspberry Pi the way that I used to, but I would still say that it's worth it. Let's see. The Orange Pi is not bad. Yeah, no, I've tried the Orange Pi. I generally like most of those devices that are well supported by like Kali Linux and other. I think that the Orange Pi has generally got good reviews, and I haven't explored it as much as I want to. But back to the question, Kali or Parrot, I would say for absolute beginners who might run into problems, Kali is going to be better. Let me explain why. I think that the community around Kali, and because it is kind of the gateway to most of these things, it's used in instruction, it's used by people who are learning online, because most of the people who are instructing are using Kali Linux. Usually you will find an answer within the Kali Linux community for Kali related problems that also apply to other operating systems, but are specifically for the tools that are built into Kali Linux. So, like I really love Parrot Security OS because it's beautiful. It makes a better daily driver, in my opinion. And most of the time it'll be compatible with like commands that you would use in Kali Linux. It's not a really big choice to make, honestly. One of them is more, in my opinion, beginner friendly because of the community of people who are contributing like answers and like having the same problem as you, basically, and are focused on the same learning objectives. And the second might be, a little less popular compared to the one that everyone's heard of and that's like used in academic settings, but it's a nicer, in my opinion, it's a nicer layout. It's like a kind of operating system that I would want to use if I was doing that kind of stuff all day, every day, or if I had other tasks to do that I just need to work. So it's like a step closer to just like running Ubuntu and weaponizing it as necessary. It's like kind of a weird curve of hackers where it's just like at the beginning, it's just like, we love Kali Linux. And then in the middle, it's like, no, Parrot's so much better. It's beautiful. And now that I'm used to Kali, I want something nicer. And then eventually you kind of loop back to like Ubuntu, where you're just like, I need other stuff to work most of the time, and then if I need to hack something, that's great too, and I can install that as I need it. So initially it's just like you want all the tools there, you want everything, and then once you get it, and once you know what you want out of those first two operating systems, a lot of hackers I know end up just going back to Ubuntu because they want all the nice stuff to work if they're going to be using this computer all the time. So at minimum, a lot of people I know dual boot Ubuntu with these other, and they're all Debian based. So again, like a lot of the commands are all going to work between them, and that's why it's not really as much of a choice as you might think. Let's see. Any BlackArch people? I'm sure if we have people that use BlackArch, they will make themselves known in the chat. They are famous for this. All right, let's see if I have other. Oh, so I wanted to actually go over some of the people's comments on the channel. I do read these. So we've been releasing more videos about surveillance and other cutouts from the show. So I wanted to address some of these questions. And first was on my automatic license plate readers collect and leak sensitive personal information. So this is talking about how most American cities are now monitored by automatic license plate readers that will take down your location, the vehicle that you're in, and store that data potentially indefinitely, and also share it with other partners. Some of those partners are law enforcement, and others might be commercial partners in the case of places like malls who are recording people's license plates and then selling the information to basically anybody who wants it. So one question was, what methods are there to effectively disrupt these systems? Well, you're looking at effectively the same kinds of tactics that people have been using for decades to get out of like speed cameras. So obscuring the license plate from a distance, like using reflective like coatings that reflect light back very strongly, make it glossy. Doing like having a fake plate that flips over. These are all things that will get you pulled over and probably in trouble. But because this is a evolving cat and mouse game that has been going on for a long time between people who like to go fast and people that are trying to catch them, like I suspect you can probably find some of the methods to disrupt these sorts of recordings, with people who have already tried to do so extensively with speed traps. So, you know, all the standard tricks. I think that my favorite one is the license plate that obscures the further away you are. So if you're like 3 or 4 car lengths away, it's readable, but over a certain distance, the lens like begins to blur or misshape the letters so that if you're far enough away, you actually can't read the license plate. So somebody following right behind you would be like, oh, I can read that just fine. But if you are a speed camera or like a automatic license plate reader, then maybe you don't have as good of a chance of doing so. That might arguably be legal. But the problem is making sure that the automatic license plate readers don't get close enough then to defeat that. Because if you're driving towards camera, obviously it's going to be recording you and trying to classify your vehicle's license plate the entire time you're approaching it. So if you get to a certain point where you're close enough that it can kind of descramble the license plate, then you're going to run into problems again. But I mean, it's a important thing to think about, that a lot of these types of surveillance don't have a way of opting out. It's just not possible. So when we talk about dragnet surveillance and why, like, you know, we don't necessarily like this, my point in this video is that that kind of information gets aggregated, it gets sold, and it can directly impact people when it comes to, like, maybe they're going somewhere for healthcare, maybe they're going to a certain, like, you know, religious function. Like, there's lots of things that most people would consider private that their driving data would reveal when stitched together. So massive hordes of this data, poorly secured and easily shared between, like, law enforcement agencies with no warrant or justification for doing so. It's a really dangerous recipe for leaking tons of sensitive data that could come back to haunt people. So stay tuned for more about this, because I think that not as many people realize that your driving record is now permanent and easily accessible to a large amount of law enforcement and maybe even commercial partners without any sort of legal justification. Pretty crazy. All right, so next comment. This one seems a little long. Every story banner has cameras. All the stores, companies, and gas stations record their property, the roads around them, and most new cars have computers and cameras on them. Most houses have security cameras or Ring doorbells. Now police departments have specially trained units that retrieve footage from cameras around areas that crimes are committed, and they're trained to pull all that footage from different cameras, pull all the data from phones, vehicles, and social media, and then sort it out and put it all together to use in investigations and tracking where someone was at the time of the crime they're investigating. There's nothing that is not true with this statement. That is accurate. Nowadays, all video cameras recording us, like, you know, recording in a persistent way, can generally be accessed by some sort of legal process. So when we're talking about store surveillance cameras, traffic cameras, Ring doorbells, like all those sorts of cameras, even potentially dash cams, all that information is available. And if people were taking recordings and uploading them based on, and they have geotagging, then that sort of information can be pulled as well. It's just interesting that now that we have all this capacity, the level of processing that is being done on this sort of data. If you're able to take all these video streams and stitch them together in a way that allows you to extract information to determine unique identifiers, license plates, like faces, like other things in the videos that could reveal people who were involved, that's exactly the kind of dragnet surveillance that a lot of police agencies are now used to doing in order to pore over all the available data to solve crimes. So James comments on this one. Some people are trying to fight back. The Finnish government's transport and communication agency has seen an increase in GNSS jamming devices. So this is talking about how certain gas tracking apps and other types of applications that track your driving are actually not so secretly selling that information to companies who then broker it to your insurance agency, who might choose to raise your rates based on something you unintentionally record yourself doing. Some of the things that we've seen raising rates in the past have been influenced by like individual, like drive, like where you live, like maybe the type of commute you have to do, and certain like unsafe or undesirable actions that insurance companies don't like might just be unavoidable depending on some people's circumstance. And that could lead to raised rates without you even understanding why that happens. So obviously jamming the GPS location would certainly solve that problem. Although if you drove by an airport, that could potentially also cause some other problems as well. All right, so all this data tracking has gone way, way too far. It needs to be banned from all equipment. If someone wishes to provide the data, they should have to buy a program that allows collection. I think any tracking or data taken is against human rights on so many levels, but to be honest, I never thought about new vehicles. Well, back to figuring out how to prevent my truck now. Thanks, bro. Yeah, so I did mention in this video a little bit about how terrified I am by the default features that are baked into new vehicles. We've talked a little bit about how like telematics are a rich source of data for car manufacturers. And these third parties and also vehicle manufacturers often will turn these on at the dealership And if you don't opt out of them, they will collect information about you constantly. Now, somebody wrote an article about trying to opt out of Toyota's data collection process, and it was so stupid and so difficult that it basically, after all this time and energy and effort, and them stonewalling the person trying to do it, they managed to do it, but in exchange got a permanent warning notification that the data is disabled. They also had to disable useful features like crash detection or being able to call an emergency responder to the scene of a wreck. It's basically you give them all of your data and let them process it however they want and potentially sell it to a third party. Or when you're in an accident, nobody knows where you are. There's no middle ground at all. So that's kind of a big deal for a lot of people who want the safety and convenience features, but don't want to have to accept that this company may have no real data retention policy. They might process your information and sell it to third parties. They might do all sorts of lax security procedures. And the most you will get, my friends, is free credit monitoring. That's not a fair trade for a lot of people. So if I had a vehicle that I knew was just waiting to breach my data, and that maybe I have to deal with people like committing fraud under my name or calling me and trying to phish me as a result of the information they can pull from that, I just don't want it, Like, arguably, like, crash detection is a pretty solid feature. Like, if you're unconscious and the car is calling for help and tells people where you are, like, that's a life-saving feature. So the fact that, again, there's no middle ground. You can either be like, I would like to die in an accident if I can't call 911, or I would like to give Toyota all of my information to sell to anybody they want to. Why are we making that choice? Like, it seems pretty crazy to me. Yes, we do have an Arch user. Thank you for announcing yourself. I was waiting. How is that legal? Read the terms of service. When you have telematics installed on the car, it is able to share diagnostic and other information with third parties. That diagnostic information could be as verbose as they want it to be. So tracking sensitive personal information, in the United States here, we don't have a lot of rules around tracking like people's locations, especially if it's included in diagnostic or there's some other legally defensible reason why you might want access to that information. The issue is really the retention policy. So like, okay, you want to be able to, record like faults or problems or other things that might include geotag data. Like that might be okay, especially if it's semi-anonymized. But if it's being stored indefinitely, and if it's being either loosely anonymized or not anonymized at all, then that means you can really start to establish surveillance. You can see patterns of life that are not obvious otherwise. And you can start to sell that analyzed information. So that's why I really don't like new cars. I kind of honestly prefer like mid 90s cars that like maybe have some of the basic telematics, but like not really into the stuff that's super baked into vehicles now. And as we saw in a lot of the other like vehicle hacking techniques we've seen, most of the time that this is successful, it's by hacking a poorly secured cloud-based telematic system that's used by multiple car vendors. Kind of interesting. Has to be illegal, maybe in Europe. But yeah, here, not so much. Kody, did you ever do any car hacking? So I've been interested in car hacking a bit, and the two different kind of angles I come at it are either from like plugging into the OBD2 port and then drawing vehicle information. Like this has been useful just generally for anybody who wants to work with like a vehicle that has problems, or to diagnose vehicle code, run diagnostics, and just get useful information from the car's bus. I would say, like, if you're looking to get started with understanding what kinds of systems are running inside a car and how to at least interpret them, then a simple like Bluetooth OBD2 adapter is a great way to get started with reading vehicle information and interpreting it in interesting ways, as well as doing things like logging all data coming out of the car while driving. Now, if you want to get into the remote control features, then that's where I'm saying the telematics are really where it's at. There's a couple of companies that partner with most car brands to install telematics into them. And once you start learning about the telematics and the cloud architecture behind it, you really start to get into the juicy stuff of hacking cars. Now, there are, of course, more direct attacks against like unlocking the door or starting the car. And that's where you see kind of criminals more coalescing. Cyber criminals are going to be interested in amplifying the signal from a keyless entry system and making the car start because it believes that the person is sitting in the seat, even when in fact they're just amplifying the signal from the key. I'm not going to get too into that one because that's how you steal a car, but that's basically the high level of it. And since I don't steal cars and have very little interest in it, aside from understanding the way it's done, I haven't really done much of that myself. And I've kind of tried not to cover that topic too much because I like our show and I would like to keep it running on the internet. To disable safety features because we turn off tracking on cars we own, I know it really, really sounds crazy to me. And when you see these investigative reports about like what has to be done to actually remove this sort of tracking, it is invasive and annoying. They deliberately make it like hard, or so few people know about the ability to opt out of it that it's just not done. And the employees here are just not very well trained on how to deal with it. And that's being kind of generous, honestly. So obviously there's a lot of data that can be extracted from these sorts of vehicles that is useful. Everybody's trying to gather and analyze data and sell it to make extra profit. And vehicles, you can imagine, are a huge source of that information. So be careful out there. Like when you buy a new vehicle, make sure that a lot of those default features, you're aware of what they are. Like they might be like nice to haves, but you need to ask questions. How does the OnStar system work? Whose account is it under? Like, is it under the dealer's account? Do you just have the dealer like signing you up for software packages and then sitting there and like maybe reselling your data? It's an open question. You really need to be a bit more curious about what happens with these telematic systems that are baked in and who runs the show. Is it an OnStar system? Like, are they actually in charge of remotely opening your car door? Like, does it matter if their login system sucks or if it just uses your vehicle's VIN, which anybody can see through the windshield, to like perform remote actions on your car? Because in the past, that's exactly how some types of car hacking have worked. Let's see. All right, so this is a really interesting type of surveillance that we've talked about on the show before, but we're talking about vehicle surveillance apparently today. That's kind of what we've evolved into. I think that's good. Urban Post says, I record all tire pressure sensor data with a hacker app that goes by my house. After many months, I can identify specific vehicles and their movements. Very accurate, as those are 4 points of metrics. So a lot of vehicles will have a Bluetooth-based pressure sensor in each car, in each tire, that reports back to a main computer and basically tells you what the pressure is inside each one. Very convenient. However, there's no security on these. So as a result, you can think of them as radio tags, like a tagged animal that's like out in its environment. And if somebody like Urban Post chooses to set up a radio receiver, then those transmitters, all 4 of them on your car's tires, are going to create a unique signature everywhere they go. So I don't actually, as a hacker, need to set up like a automated license plate scanner, even though you can literally do one of those with a trusty Raspberry Pi. I could instead just listen for the signals from a tire pressure sensor system and start to correlate it with individuals and with individual cars. So you could also correlate that information together and create like a radio signal tag for like a specific plate and have 2 ways of tracking the same vehicle. But essentially, you can just use a radio as well to begin doing the same type of surveillance that you would do with the camera. So lots of ways to do dragnet surveillance. And I think that like do-it-yourself, community-based dragnet surveillance is the best kind. Like Wiggle Wi-Fi, for example, is using wireless radios built into everyone's cell phones to create a map of where everything is. And that sort of community-based like mass surveillance, I think, is the only kind that is acceptable. So anyway, Urban Post with the good idea on tire pressure sensor surveillance. Yeah, so apparently not the only person doing that. Also, James also had a cheap SDR logging all the tire pressure sensor data for a few months. I also made a portable version I can control from my phone. That is so cool. I think of all the things that I should do a Null Byte episode on, creating a mass surveillance system with like little microcontrollers like would be really cool. So if you could get them to receive the tire pressure sensor data, and then you could get them to like call back to a wireless network and like inform that somebody was nearby, you could create a network of sensors that's looking for those specific tires that's really low cost and probably extremely accurate. So of course I'm going to try mounting that on the drone. Like if we make that a full Null Byte video and see if I can fly around and identify specific vehicles from the air, that would be, I think, a lot of fun and an interesting proof of concept for this. SEQ, please answer last question, please. I'm going to scroll up, but I really suspect it has to do with WPA3 based on your consistency. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, I'm so sorry. You know what? You do have some variety in your questions today. I know that usually you're all gas on the WPA3, and I'm trying to deliver on that. We actually made a cutout that I scheduled just for you. But let's talk about network scanning. So for network scanning, I typically do 2 different levels. So if I'm just jumping on a network, the first thing I'm going to do is an ARP scan. Now, an ARP scan is nice because I can just do like ARP scan -L, and I can get the network range of an unknown network really quickly. So like when you're doing network scanning, you're going to do something like like ifconfig or IPA or run some other sort of network interface command that gives you a list of all the different networks you're connected to. So let's say I want to find my Pershing on a network, and I know it's there, but I don't know the network range, so I don't know what the IP addresses look like, and I'm a beginner, so I don't know anything. How do I do that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join the network and then run ifconfig, IPA, something like that to give me my IP address. Now, technically, that's enough to get the whole network range. And then you can just run something like ipcalc, which will calculate everything based on that one IP address. And that's my cheat sheet. If I find myself on some insano network with a weird network range, I will just get my own IP address, run it through ipcalc, and it'll give me in the output the network range. I almost kind of want to show that off if I have a good example of it. Terminal. Do I have a, no? Okay. All right. So if I, let me show my screen. All right, that needs to be so much bigger. So let's say I don't know, I don't know my network name. I'm going to, let's say, run IPA, whatever, and I get back 192.168.145, something like that. So let's say that I'm a beginner. I don't know what the network range is, and I wouldn't know how to scan this. I can do like ARP scan. It's like an ARP scan command would work fine. I could do ARP scan -L. And this command, if I run it, will give me a list of all the different devices on the network. And I like ARP scans because they're rough and dirty, and they don't that's like the shortest command. Like any idiot can run it. You don't need to know like the network range. But for an Nmap scan, you do need to know the network range. So let's say I know my IP address, and then I just use ipcalc. And I press enter. And look at that. It gives me, in big cheater, bad at math style, it gives me all the network information about the network that this device lives on. So, okay, I know that if I wanted to do an Nmap scan, it would look like this: 192.168.10/24. Cool. All right, so based on that, I could do an Nmap scan. So if I just do Nmap and then literally that, it's going to run a basic Nmap scan. Oh, wait, no, that's not right. Sorry. We want the network range. So if I copy that and paste it, and I just do this Nmap scan, this is going to be the most basic Nmap scan, but I'll also do things like port 80 -- open. And this will be a typical Nmap scan for me. Like this is looking for, any port 80 on the network that is open. So, these sorts of scans you can specify, like more things, whatever, but that's how I typically run a scan. So to answer your question, I use Nmap, but that's my process from going from, I don't know what IP address I have, to oh, this is all the IP addresses on the network, to this is all the IP addresses on the network that have a specific port open. And also, don't tell me about any that fail. Otherwise, if I tell it to look for port 80 and then I don't put this -- open, it's just going to tell me everything it finds regardless. Basically, it's going to look for port 80 and specify that, but it's also just going to tell me things that don't have it open. If I just want the output to be clean, I can add -- open, and it makes it a little bit easier. So that's how I get around a network. That's my compass for figuring out a new network when I connect to it. I would definitely recommend that for anybody who's just getting started with network scanning. On a smartphone, I frequently will use Fing, F-I-N-G, and this has been around since the start of Nullbyte. Fing Network Scanner used to be really outstanding, and it looks like Android also might be partially responsible for making it a little bit worse. It seems like Android no longer lets you see MAC addresses properly, or at least they're claiming that they don't, which is really weird. So as a result, it's become less useful to scan your network because they're not able to tell you what a specific device is based on its MAC address. So used to all be able to tell you about the vendor. Now it can't do that. And they've been making the most ridiculous pop-ups that say, you need to slow down. You don't get any scans till tomorrow. Other users have to use the service too, but you're literally scanning your own network from the phone. So what are they talking about? That makes no sense. So I wish Fing Scanner well. They've been a wonderful service for a long time, but they need to stop saying stuff that makes no sense, because as a user of their product, literally it's for IT people and for people who understand networking to do scans. Why am I getting timed out? It doesn't make any sense at all. So yeah, I am becoming increasingly a Fing networking scanner. I've heard Wi-Fi Man by Cisco, I think it is, also does an okay job. I think it got nerfed a little bit, and then I got angry and uninstalled it because I no longer have it on my phone. So unfortunately, dwindling options to locate networking devices on Android phones, which I am not a fan of, honestly. You can still though install like Linux on the Android phone and then run networking scans based on that. And that actually does work. So sometimes in a pinch, I'll just be, opening up Termux or something, installing Nmap and running a scan that way because Fing sucks. Yes, but I can't run ARP scan on a non-rooted device. Okay, but you can definitely run ifconfig or IPA, and then you could run ipcal to get the network range. So that'll do it. You can definitely still do a good scan. Using Fing is bad now. Can't see the MAC address and other stuff. That's why I use Termux and made my own tools. Yeah, dude, I'm in the exact same boat. Like you and I see eye to eye on that one. Like Fing used to be great. Their new stuff is goofy. Like they're downgrading, like makes it less useful. Like, and again, maybe some of that is Android. Maybe some of that is, the company itself. I totally don't know. Yes, other Termux users. I have to say, I went to an unnamed observatory in Los Angeles and connected to their guest network and like did a little scan on Termux, and I found lots of stuff connected to that network that was unsecured with default passwords. So just be aware, like it can actually be a really powerful thing to use like a terminal-based scanner, like just like regular Nmap or like other tools in Termux on an Android device. Like there are certain things you might not be able to do like that require root, but other things that you can do are perfectly fine. And especially networking-based things tend to be pretty okay when you're just doing network scans and some other basic stuff. So see what you can get away with. But yeah, I enjoy using Termux and other things like that for networking scanning specifically. A lot of good questions today. All right, so we've got let's see, got a couple minutes left. I guess we're at 47 minutes. Sorry I was on the phone, so I missed out a lot, but Termux issues are usually related to permission changes in Android 13 and 14. I am not surprised. James says, I wonder if it pulls the MAC address from an online database or something, identifying that might use some online resources, all that, not much. So I don't know, man. Like, honestly, these vendor MAC address lookup tables are very small. Like, having that be part of the application is like pretty much standard. Like Wireshark, for example, has its own MAC address lookup library that's free that anybody can use, that's mostly accurate. So like if it's free and it's already being used with Wireshark and it's out there, why can't they do it? Like it, so they're definitely doing some data enrichment. I think they're pulling in some information and whatever else maybe about that device, but like I didn't ask for that and I don't need it. I just need to find stuff on my network. Like if my 3D printer keeps moving around on IP addresses, I just need to be able to locate the thing, So I just want to be the lord of my own network and be able to see where my stuff is. So like if they're going to restrict those features or like make it so that I have to like, pull in more enriching data just to even see what's out there, then it's not a very good flashlight for me to look around the network. And that's how I see these things. It's basically like a light to look around, get a view of what's going on, and then investigate anything of interest. And like the more difficult they make it to use those tools, the less interested I am in the apps like Fing. So shape up Fing. You got a lot of admirers in the hacker community that are feeling burned. Again, though, like a lot of this is probably to do with some of the features built into Android, but maybe not all of them. Let's see. All right, so I just want to make sure I don't miss any other questions. I also have a couple more, I think, from the show. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one. I get this one pretty frequently. I'm gonna put it up. So the question is, if it will appear, why do you use a Mac instead of GNU Linux? So when I very first started doing the Nullbyte show forever ago, the previous person who did the forums, I guess, for Nullbyte was called Occupy the Web. And the first thing he posted was that like they would let any idiot do like a hacking show nowadays, like how sad it was that I was using like a Mac computer and that like I couldn't possibly be a real hacker because a real hacker would never use a Mac OS system. An interesting opinion, but it also like cemented the idea in my head that like a good amount of people in the hacker community are maybe a little judgmental or super like teamsy about like which operating system they pick. I am very fluid with the operating systems I use. I have little loyalty and I will use each one for the purpose it's best for without championing it at all, like beyond that point. So I don't know, like I feel like a lot of people really settle in, they try to find the perfect operating system for them that works just the way they want. And I haven't found that, like I still use Windows for like some microcontroller tasks, because sometimes the permissions in Linux get sticky and make it difficult for me to show how to do some of the things I'm trying to do in front of an audience. Sometimes I'll use macOS if I need to do like graphic work or design work or streaming work or media work or anything where like an errant Linux driver is an unwanted 30 to 45 minute detour down an already difficult process. So if I just want things, either to work, or if I need to make things compatible with other like content creators or designers, then I tend to use macOS, especially if I can get someone to pay for it for free. I will take any free computer, but especially expensive ones I could one day exchange for like a used Honda. And in addition, while I have many beloved ThinkPads that are, there's one sitting right there. Trust me, I use plenty of Linux and GNU systems. However, I use it for hacking. So today you're seeing me at work and I'm actually streaming from this computer. So I've got my like media / streaming / writing / editing, whatever computer. And then I have my, security computer, which is horrifying. And I hope you guys like the sticker pack I did on it. It's very glowy core. It's a lot of just like CISA, NSA, like just like big government stickers everywhere. So you will see my ThinkPad. I don't exclusively use macOS, but my typical daily driver tends to be macOS because someone bought it for me. So I'm going to use it. All right. So the next question was, or I guess it's perhaps a statement. This is a really long story. All right, let's see. I don't know what the mercenary supply are, but I had 2 devices. One was stolen, both on the same iCloud, and unlocked it quick somehow. Maybe they saw me type the code. When I confronted the attacker because I knew something was wrong, all my apps were dead and I had no outgoing signal, but Apple apps still work. My iCloud would go through. When my phone mysteriously turned to lost mode, but I remember having seen lockdown mode, so I instantly ran it without having already wiped my phone. All right, when it came back, everything was good. My iCloud was off. Okay, it was a sophisticated attack. All right. So I'm the details of this are a little fuzzy to me. However, it seems as though an iCloud attack, which was very annoying to fend off. I see a good amount of this. So honestly, like cloud services that back up like Android and iOS devices are like incredibly vulnerable to these sorts of things. So don't have a lot to say about it specifically because I don't deal with those attacks most of the time, but they are very common. All right. And then my favorite comment, we made the space noodle at tour camp. This was a 26-foot tall glowing noodle that glowed long into the night to allow people to navigate through the dark camp. It was truly a spectacle. So gotta love a prominent noodle. Thank you. I appreciate that. I worked hard on the space noodle and I feel like it really came together in the end. All right, so that's about all the time. Oh, wait, do I know of any hackers that use Windows? Yeah, a lot of like car hackers like tend to use Windows. And then there's some other specific, like a lot of people that do embedded stuff tend to use Windows. There's definitely a community of people that use Windows. Also like web app pen testers, like they don't care what operating system it's running on because it's like all browsers and cloud stuff anyway. So there's not a strong preference in that community either. So yeah, there's I'm glad you like the Honda comment. There's definitely some hackers that specialize in Windows or prefer it as an operating system for doing some of the stuff it's going to do. Like if you're the kind of hacker that knows how to write like really nasty PowerShell scripts or like understand some of the obscene commands used to do Windows admin stuff or Azure stuff, like there's a very specific niche of bad things you can do, which is actually unfortunately super applicable to cybercrime and ransomware. So yeah, like there's a lot of hackers I know who specialize in Windows, and like most of them are legal, and then some of the other ones might be less legal, like, and specialize in, as corporate networks tend to be Windows, maybe doing bad things in Windows, hopefully for a reputable security company. So yeah, like Windows pen testing, like all that stuff, like most businesses, use Windows for their employees. So hackers that specialize in Windows, especially PowerShell and like that sort of environment, like they're going to get paid a lot because that's most of the kinds of security threats that large businesses face. So it's funny that people are so like, hackers only use Linux. Like, what if your job is securing like a vast fleet of Windows systems and you need to like wake up every morning out of a bed of Windows to just like understand the problems that people are running into? It's an intricate system. There's a lot of things people don't know, and becoming an expert in any sort of system will lead you to have all sorts of opportunities. So no, like I reject the notion that hackers have to use any sort of particular like operating system. I think that it's good to know Linux because it's going to be your best tool for a lot of the generic things that hackers do. But when it comes to people who favor Windows, there's like such a market for that. And I know at Varonis, where I work, we're all about Windows. Like there's a lot of Windows coverage. because most of the customers that we're working with, like, use Windows in at least some way, shape, or form. So yeah, like if you've been wondering if your Windows experience can come in handy in security, and if you can be a real hacker while just using Windows, yes, you absolutely can. People might try to gatekeep you, but then you could just lock them out of their Azure account and they won't get email anymore or whatever. Right. So I think we're just about at the end of the show. Max spoofing. Occupy the Web. Yeah. So, all right, you guys want the tea? Yeah. No. So I don't know Occupy the Web in person. When I got hired on the Nullbyte channel, Nullbyte originally was a forum that was user driven, and I guess like the arrangement was they like paid him to like organize the forums or like whatever, but it was very much like just any other hacker forum. It's like everybody was anonymous, nobody was held to any type of particular writing standard. Some of the posts were really good, some of the posts were complete messes, and like nobody really had an incentive to become a better writer. It was just like all, community driven. So Occupy the Web, I guess, like got in a little bit of a tiff with the previous owners, left, and was just like, Nullbyte is terrible, everybody should leave, the operators are the worst. So a good amount of the active participants left, and then there was so much like community discussion and like anger in the Nullbyte forums that the owners of the website just turned off the forums. They completely disabled the ability to direct message, and then got rid of the forums for a while. So basically, they silenced the community from speaking to each other, and they're like, "This is trash. This is junk. Like we don't know what to do with it." So that's around the time that I started as a writer, and I was the only Nullbyte writer at the time. They eventually made me the editor, and I hired more writers who were interested in becoming better writers. And it changed from kind of a hodgepodge of like random articles to like a bunch of beginner-friendly guides that featured specific standards, like AP style guidelines, making it easy, making it readable, and we really like whipped the channel into shape. So that was kind of the situation. When I first started the YouTube channel, that's when I got some more public feedback from Occupy the Web, who just made the comment that like I must be an idiot because I used Windows, and it was pathetic that the previous owners were just letting anybody make cybersecurity content. I think that Occupy the Web has done some useful things for the cybersecurity community since. Like, he's written a great book. Well, I hear it's a great book. I haven't read it personally, but a lot of people have said they like the book. But like, I think there's a lot of different ways to get people excited about cyber, making it sound like sexy, mysterious, like, like how everybody has a code name. We're all working for like secret spy agencies. It's all cloak and dagger. That's not the reality of most people's jobs. Most people's jobs in cyber are like sometimes a little repetitive and boring. And like getting those things to be more exciting has been something that we've really tried hard to make like the forefront. We want you to actually know what it's like to work in cybersecurity, because it's not all like crazy stuff. It's like a lot of it's normal, and like that's stuff you have to learn if you actually want to do this. So what do I appreciate about Occupy the Web? I think he gets a lot of people excited. I think that he makes it cybersecurity maybe a little bit more mysterious and interesting than I have found it to be. But I also think that there's definitely some value with being like humble and like not making people feel unwelcome in the community. And my first impression with him was definitely like from him in a place of anger towards like these people that he like already had beef with, lashing out at me. And that made me feel like cyber people sucked and were very loud and opinionated, but like not very interested in anyone but themselves. I found that was not true, but I've only found the people that don't feel that way by revealing my face, like taking steps to like kind of open myself up to both like criticism for when I'm wrong, but also like being a beginner and being unabashed about that when I'm learning new topics. So like not everybody needs to be a super secret cyber ninja that knows everything to be useful teaching. And I think that like recognizing that and not gatekeeping people who are not a master is fine. Is probably a better approach than like, like weighing in and making people, because like now I have a platform and like that's my first experience with them, like so the fact that like that sort of thing, like making someone feel unwelcome in the community might not be the best move, is definitely something to remember. But again, like I think that for one thing that made me uncomfortable when I was getting started versus like the various contributions, and also considering the context of the situation where it sounds like, a community resource was very abruptly yanked away from the community that was maintaining and building it. Like I definitely understand the frustration and anger, but it's also something that I've heard from the community at large. And like that when I saw the why do you use a Mac OS comment, it's probably just genuine curiosity, but it does remind me that back when I was getting started, before I had this record behind me of like good tutorials and like knowledge, or at least contributions to the community, like I used to get all the time. It's like, why would you use a Mac OS? That's pathetic. Like, it was like, this computer's so expensive. It's just like, anytime I can get anybody to give me an expensive computer, I'm going to use it. Like, it's just a rule. So anyway, so that's the story. As I said, I think that Occupy the Web has been a number of contributions. I think that a lot of people have gotten excited about cybersecurity from him. I think a lot of people have learned basic concepts from him. I disagree that cyber necessarily has to be like sexy and mysterious. And I think that sometimes it just isn't for people that get into it. So if you're expecting to, be like, I don't know, if you're just expecting your life to be crazy getting into cybersecurity, it might be sometimes, but it's not. You don't always need to pick a hacker name and hide your face or whatever. If you're just doing like normal cyber stuff and you're trying to teach and inspire people. That's my opinion. So anyway, I appreciate all content creators out there that teach people. I think that free content is the way that most of us learn. And again, like it was a pretty frustrating and unfair situation that he had just come out of with Nullbyte. So totally understand the context here, but always be careful with your words when people are just getting into this sort of stuff. I feel like generally making people feel unwelcome is the worst part about cyber. And I think a lot of people would probably feel the same way. There's a lot of people who feel a lot of pressure within the industry to, like be cool, to have a cool job, I guess, to make this like a big part of their personality. And that's fine, I guess. But like everybody goes beyond the job. Everybody's like more than just their work. And I think it's important to recognize that, especially for people who might not be as skilled as you now, but, are on their way up. So, okay. All right. I think that is. Oh yeah, and then David Bambal, Network Chuck, and more are so cool for learning. Yeah, man, there's a lot of great people. I would also shout out Serena, She Networks, Make It Hackin', Andrew. Like, there's a lot of really great content creators that are so friendly and like just like very welcoming and super cool, and like get people who are just getting started to feel great. And like they should be there. I think that those are the kind of content creators I love being friends with, and that I always gravitate towards. And I just, like John Hammond, like some of the other people out there that have been super friendly to me and like made me feel welcome in the community. Like I notice when you guys like go to my talks and like whatever else, like sometimes like I'm too overwhelmed to really like do much about it because I sign up for a lot of stress on purpose. However, I do notice that there have been a great community of super friendly content creators out there that have made me feel welcome and that have like collaborated with me and like made me feel like a part of the community. Simply Cyber is another one that's been on the show and also has like interviewed me and was really fun to work with. So yeah, there's a lot of people I would shout out there as content creators that made me feel extremely welcome. I don't want to focus on, like one of the few negative experiences. I think the other one was another YouTuber when my channels got taken down. Somebody like made an opinion piece saying that like good, that should happen. Like this is the proper thing to be teaching cybersecurity students. Like my videos are too spicy and they don't have enough real content. So it's good that YouTube takes it down. And it's just like, I'll remember that. And then he came over to me at a conference and tried to give me stickers. I'm like, I'll take one. But yeah, so aside from that, I've had almost universally positive experience with other content creators in the cybersecurity space, which is pretty remarkable to say considering how many of us there are and how contentious this is sometimes. But yeah, I think this is a pretty good community. And over again, I'm won over by the people who are making it better and trying to become more inclusive and make more different types of people get interested in this and actually stick to it enough to be able to make it through. Because it's really hard when you get all these signs that maybe you're not welcome here, maybe you don't belong here. Ignoring those is difficult for a lot of people. So, making people feel welcome is kind of option number one. I work in cybersecurity and my day job is most of it is reading logs, answering security assessments, and trying to pass audits. Very rarely do I get to do cool red team stuff. That's what I'm saying, honestly. Like, I think that like if you can learn the fundamentals, like understand them, know what they're for, and then like, be able to understand the expectations of the job you're about to take on. Like it feels almost disingenuous to make people feel like they're going to be in a spy thriller every day when a lot of this is diligence. It's experience. It's like the context to know certain things that somebody not in your role wouldn't or would overlook. Like that's really what people are paying for, not, in most cases anyway, the ability to go do like Mr. Robot stuff on a daily basis. All right, that is all the time we have for today, and I am out of here. My flight to Los Angeles is tomorrow morning, or from Los Angeles is tomorrow morning. I'm going to be in New York, enjoying the historic heat wave and lugging things around St. John's University for the Hope Conference. So if you didn't hear my shout out earlier, I'm going to be doing a talk at Hope, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to be talking about microcontroller-based education on a budget. I have been doing a lot of education, as you can probably tell with all the classes that I do, making these smart Pusheen kits, making open source hacking tools and also teaching. I have kind of compiled all these experiences into a guide for if anybody wants to make their own classes, if someone's maybe starting a makerspace, or if they're trying to find content for their local library that includes maker and hacker topics. Well, I've been doing that for several years now, and I found a number of different kits and lessons that perform exceptionally well and that people seem to really like that don't break the bank. So if you've got a small grant, or if you're, burning your own money and you have maybe a budget of like a couple $100s, then these are some really awesome projects you can do that are engaging, fun, and teach a number of fundamental lessons about cybersecurity and electronics. Been super, super fun to do all this. So sharing my experiences and some really cute feedback from some of the kids that have taken my classes is going to be very exciting. So yeah, looking forward to actually, wait, let me see. When is my talk? I need to know when that is. Here I am teaching with microcontrollers, hope for ethical hacking on a budget. It doesn't say, so look forward to that on the schedule. But anyway, I will see hopefully some of you at Hope. I got to meet some other fans of the show at the last conference I went to, and it was super fun. So if you recognize me, please say hi. It's funny because like one of the Null Byte fans that I met was just like, "It's you, you're famous." I'm like, nobody has known who I am for about 4 months. So famous is an extremely relative word, but at this gathering, I appreciate that. So yes, if you were Peter from Serbia and you hung out with me at tour camp, I remember you and you were awesome. And I hope you liked me turning the Space Noodle the colors of the Serbian flag. All right, so yes, now it really is the end of the show. That's all the time we have. Thank you to everybody for hanging out. I think we're probably going to be in New York for the next stream, so you'll hear back from me next Wednesday. But I'm going to be taking lots of video and hopefully seeing some of you at this next conference. I want to thank everybody on the show today. We got a lot of people in the stream. It was very lively. And if you want to check in next week, I will be here Wednesday. Finally, if you want to support the show, as always, you can go to veronis.com/Kody. That's Kody. Let everyone here know that you appreciate the show and you want me to go live twice a week, every week, except this week because of the conference. So with that being said, I appreciate your support, appreciate hanging out with all of you, and I will see you all next week. Goodbye, everyone.